I bought 4 acres of quiet woods just to stay clear of any homeowners association, but at dawn one spring morning the president rolled in with a bulldozer anyway. She figured a clipboard, a fake county inspector, and a private security detail gave her the right to redraw my property line. What she didn't count on was the drone I'd left hovering all night, the motion-activated floodlights I'd wired myself, and the retired cartographer who had spent 3 decades making sure every line on every map in the state was exact to the millimeter. That footage, those lights, and one calm phone call to the sheriff turned her little land grab into a multi-count felony indictment that made the front page of the Willow County Gazette for 6 straight weeks, spawned 3 editorials about HOA overreach, inspired a local radio host to coin the phrase buffer zone gate, and even prompted the state legislature to introduce House Bill 1147, the Property Line Integrity Act, which passed unanimously the following session. My name is Harold Grayson. I'm 58, retired after 32 years as senior cartographer for the State Department of Transportation. I started in 1991 with a drafting table, a light box, and a mechanical pencil that cost more than my first paycheck. I moved to AutoCAD in 98, supervised the first LiDAR flights over the capital region in 2009, and finished my career certifying boundary surveys for every new interchange from the mountains to the coast. I have drawn center lines for 6-lane highways, wetland buffers for big box stores, and the curved property corners of every subdivision built since the Clinton administration. Lines are more than ink on mylar. They are the difference between a farmer's corn and a developer's cul-de-sac, between a quiet creek and a retention pond full of shopping carts. When Ellen and I sold the split level in the city, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, HOA that fined us $75 for painting the front door eggshell instead of ivory whisper. We hunted for one line nobody could fudge, the edge of a piece of ground that belonged only to us and to the deer that bedded down under the hickories. We found it on the west side of Willow Creek Estates, a gated community of 212 McMansions built between 2001 and 2019 on what used to be the McAllister Dairy. The covenants run 37 pages, single-spaced, and include rules about mailbox reflectivity, minimum 70% per ASTM D4956, the exact shade of mulch, black diamond, no substitutions, and a ban on basketball hoops visible from the street between March 15th and November 15th. Our side of the split-rail fence, hand-hewn locust posts set in 1987 by Otis McAllister himself, initials still carved in the third rail, was a cathedral of white oaks, shagbark hickories, and a seasonal creek that burbled like a happy secret after every thunderstorm. The deed was recorded in Book 412, page 87, on March 14, 1989. The survey recertified by licensed surveyor Carla M. Hensley, PLS 4127, on June 3, 2023, the day we closed. I slept better knowing the county GIS layer put the southwest corner exactly 0.7 feet west of where my left boot stood every morning while I drank coffee from a chipped mug that once belonged to Ellen's father, a man who believed anything worth saying could be said before sunrise, and anything worth drinking should be strong enough to float a horseshoe. The first hint of trouble came 3 weeks after we moved in. A glossy postcard arrived in the mailbox. Welcome to the neighborhood. Mandatory Architectural Review Committee walkthrough, Saturday 9 a.m. Ellen laughed until she saw the fine print. Non-members subject to aesthetic compliance fees up to $500 per violation. I filed it in the circular bin next to the junk mail for vinyl siding and reverse mortgages. The real trouble started with a diesel cough at 4:57 a.m. on Tuesday, April 11th. I'd been up anyway. Old habits from night shift deadlines die hard. I padded onto the deck in flannel pajama bottoms and barn boots, coffee steaming in the mug. The sky was the color of a fresh bruise. A yellow Caterpillar D6 idled on the shoulder of Willow Creek Boulevard, its blade lowered like a boxer's guard. A flatbed trailer still smoked from the 20-mile haul from a rental yard in the next county. Standing in front of the machine, arms folded inside a pristine white Nike tracksuit, was Marlene Whitaker, 54, Pilates-toned, platinum bob shellacked into submission, and president of the Willow Creek HOA for the 3rd consecutive term. Her smile could cut plate glass and had, rumor said, ended 2 marriages and 1 landscaping contract. She spotted me and flashed it anyway. Morning, Harold. Perfect weather for a little community upgrade. I walked the slope in no particular hurry, boots squishing dew from the fescue. When I reached the fence, I set my mug on the top rail, right beside the knot where Otis had carved OM. Plus MM. 1987. Marlene. That dozer looks thirsty. Planning to dig a swimming pool for the neighborhood. We're reclaiming the buffer zone, she said, producing a 3-page packet clipped to a glossy clipboard embossed with the Willow Creek heron. Fire hazard. Erosion risk. Visual blight. The board voted 11-2 last night to install a native wildflower meadow for the enjoyment of all residents and to increase curb appeal by an estimated 4.7% according to the 2022 resale comps. I glanced at the iron survey pin half buried beside my left boot. The orange plastic cap still bore the raised letters Grayson, 2023, Hensley, PLS 4127. My deed says that pin is the limit of your aesthetic jurisdiction. You're welcome to seed dandelions on your side till the cows come home. She gave the short, humorless laugh I'd heard at 3 annual meetings, 1 emergency session about holiday light wattage, and a special assessment for repaving the tennis court that nobody used. The covenants grant the association control of the visual corridor within 50 feet of any improved lot. We have a permit. She rattled the papers like a maraca at a bad wedding. I'd reviewed enough county permits to smell the difference between legal vellum and Kinko's copy paper. Show me the judge's signature, the recorded easement, the 48-hour notice served on the record owner by certified mail, the environmental impact worksheet stamped by the Army Corps, and the liability insurance rider naming me as additional insured. Otherwise, that cat rolls back up the ramp before my coffee gets cold. The operator, Victor Lang, thick neck, thicker gut, Willow Creek's new exclusive landscaper, leaned out of the cab. Lady pays the invoice. We dig the hole. 1 more inch, I told him, voice flat as the plat map on my office wall. And I dial 911 for criminal trespass with intent to commit theft of real property. Marlene's smile calcified. This is sanctioned HOA action under Article 12, Section 4. I already had the phone to my ear. While it rang, I counted 6 porch lights flick on across the cul-de-sac. Mrs. Delgado in her chenille robe, curlers like pink grenades. The Patels with twin toddlers on their hips. The Kowalskis, retirees who filmed everything on an iPad the size of a billboard. Phones glowed like fireflies. The dispatcher patched me to Deputy Rollins, who arrived 14 minutes later in a cruiser that still smelled of the night shift's burritos and stale Red Bull. He was 29, polite, and clearly hoping for a quiet end to his graveyard tour. He listened to Marlene's pitch about safety, property values, and the sacred meadow, then to my calm recitation of deed book, page, and survey stamp. He flipped through her packet, handed it back. Ma'am, this is an internal work order on HOA letterhead. No court order, no entry. Stay on your side of the fence. He turned to me. Keep those markers visible, sir. Something tells me this isn't finished. Marlene didn't speak. She simply stared daggers while Victor reversed the dozer up the ramp with a grinding of gears that sounded like surrender and smelled like burnt clutch. The paper blitz began the following Monday. Cream-colored envelopes, embossed with the Willow Creek crest, a stylized heron that looked more like a stork on steroids, stacked in my mailbox like jury summons. First citation, unapproved exterior flora, $150, accompanied by drone photos of my redbud tree taken at 6:14 a.m. Second, non-compliant boundary demarcation, $200, because the split rail had visible weathering inconsistent with community standards. Third, delivered by certified mail, so I had to sign at the post office, was my personal favorite. Visual pollution, $200, accompanied by an 8x10 glossy of Ellen's ceramic frog, Ferdinand, perched beside the birdbath with one painted eye winking at the camera. The complaint claimed Ferdinand's cheerful green glaze created a discordant visual experience for passing motorists on Willow Creek Boulevard. Ellen read the letter aloud in the kitchen, voice rising with every syllable until the dog hid under the table. They can't fine us for a frog. We're not in their stupid association. We don't even get the stupid newsletter. They're trying to make us miserable enough to sell, I said, refilling her coffee. Fine. I spent 30 years laminating state seals and emergency deter maps. Let's play their game. That Saturday, I fired up the color laser and designed an 8.5 by 11 certificate on 110-pound ivory cardstock. Bold Garamond across the top. Official permit to mind your own business. Below, in mock legalese calligraphy, it granted Harold and Ellen Grayson irrevocable rights to cultivate trees of any species, maintain a fence of rustic character, display lawn ornaments of a whimsical nature, and operate a certified wildlife habitat per the National Wildlife Federation. I signed with a fountain pen my daughter gave me for my 50th, ran it through the industrial laminator I'd rescued from the DOT surplus sale, and zip-tied it to the middle rail facing Marlene's kitchen window. Ellen added a QR code at the bottom. Scan it, and the county plat loaded with a pulsing red dot. Not Willow Creek Estates. She also embedded a tiny audio file, 3 seconds of Ferdinand croaking ribbit in a cartoon voice. By noon, my server logged 9 scans from the clubhouse Wi-Fi. One lingered for 4 minutes, long enough to zoom, pan, and screenshot. Another opened the audio file. I heard the ribbit echo faintly across the lawn at 12:47 p.m. When Marlene's garage door rolled up. Marlene hired a licensed surveyor named Gary Poole. I drove to the farm supply store and bought 24 neon wire flags, hot pink, lime, safety orange, and 1 rogue purple because the kid at the register said it was leftover from Pride Month. At 1:47 a.m., I crept along the fence line in wool socks and a headlamp, planting flags in spirals, zigzags, a giant peace sign, and 1 Johnny Beret on Ferdinand's head. The surveyor arrived at 8 sharp, thermos in hand, clipboard under arm. I watched from the office window as he spent 43 minutes pulling decoys before he could start. He looked like a man who'd rather be fishing. When he finally located the real pins, he spent another 20 minutes triple-checking bearings with a handheld GPS that probably cost more than my first car. I waved from the deck. He pretended not to see me. Then came the certified letter that turned jokes into war. 8 pages, legal size, printed on watermarked bond, announcing a mandatory community beautification initiative under the Grand Willow Creek Preservation Act. The final paragraph scheduled a cleanup day, date, time, location, my backyard, 8 a.m. Sharp, bring gloves and enthusiasm. They were declaring open season on my oaks in writing, complete with a sign-up genius link and a suggested donation of $25 per volunteer to cover bottled water. Ellen and I stopped laughing. This was no longer about frogs. I own a quiet little drone I named Owl, custom quadcopter built from a DJI Flame wheel frame, FLIR View Pro thermal, Sony 4K night vision module, rotors damped to 62 decibels at 50 feet. I flew it for fun on weekends, mapping the creek's meanders and the deer trails that crisscross the woods. That night, I launched it from the deck at 11:42 p.m., climbed to 400 feet, and locked it in stationary hover above the fence line with the gimbal pointed straight down. I poured a third mug of decaf, opened the laptop on the kitchen table, and waited. The thermal feed painted the world in ghosts. A doe picking her way through the underbrush, a raccoon interrogating a trash can 2 houses down, an owl, real one, perching on a dead snag. At 2:03 a.m., a dark panel van eased to the curb, headlights off, engine ticking as it cooled. 2 heat signatures slipped out carrying a canvas tool roll and what looked like a post mall. They moved with the confidence of men who'd rehearsed in daylight. Thermal showed them kneeling at the southwest corner pin. One worked a stake puller. The iron pin came free with a grunt I could almost hear through the open window. They tossed it into the ferns like a beer can. 30 feet inside my line, the second man drove a cheap wooden stake. Home Depot orange, still bearing the 79-cent price tag. They repeated the routine at the midpoint and the far corner, pacing off distances with a fiberglass tape that glowed white-hot. On the last pass, the mall man turned his face skyward, perhaps sensing the faint whine of rotors. I switched to 4K, zoomed to 12x, froze the frame. Victor Lang, unmistakable even in grainy moonlight, the same contractor Marlene had introduced at the annual picnic as our new partner in beautification and boundary harmonization. I had them on video committing survey fraud, a Class 4 felony in our state with a maximum of 5 years and a $10,000 fine. Marlene posted her masterpiece the next afternoon at 3:17 p.m., a photo taken from her second-story deck with a telephoto lens, my woods cropped and darkened until they resembled the Black Forest in a grim tale. The caption ran 312 words about one selfish neighbor jeopardizing fire safety, erosion control, and resale values for 200 families. She called an emergency meeting Thursday at 7 to fund the Meadow Project and explore all legal avenues. Comments rolled in, fire emojis, prayer hands, one neighbor offering to bring his steel chainsaw, another promising homemade lemonade for the volunteers. I saw my opening and spent the next 48 hours preparing the presentation of my life. Thursday night, the clubhouse smelled of burnt Folgers and floral perfume. Folding chairs scraped linoleum. Marlene worked the room in a coral blazer and pearl earrings, voice pitched to carry over the hum of the HVAC. When she pointed me out, Mr. Grayson, gracing us with his presence, I stood. Mind if I show a brief presentation? It's only 90 seconds. She thought I'd rant and prove her villain edit. She waved me forward with theatrical generosity. I plugged in a thumb drive labeled evidence, do not erase. The projector woke with thermal ghosts yanking pins. Gasps rippled. I advanced slide by slide. GPS overlay showing the fraudulent line, still frames of Victor's face, a screenshot of the county plat with the real boundary in green and the fake in red. I ended with the QR code from my laminated permit. Someone in the back row actually scanned it. Ferdinand's ribbit echoed through the PA system. Walter Finch, the treasurer, went the color of skim milk. Phones rose like periscopes. Marlene sputtered about deep fakes, Adobe Photoshop, and the need for an independent forensic audit. She insisted the cleanup would proceed Saturday at 8, with a county inspector present to ensure full compliance with environmental statutes. Saturday arrived humid and gray, the kind of morning that makes dogs stick to porches. Marlene, Victor, and a plump man in a county polo, badge flashed too fast to read, stood at the fence with clippers, a hedge trimmer, a gasoline string trimmer that looked hungry, and a folding table holding a cooler of Dasani. I walked down with my phone recording in 4K. Ellen filmed from the porch with the good camera on a carbon fiber tripod, live streaming to a private YouTube channel titled Grayson v. Whitaker, do not delete. Morning, folks. Small turnout for a community event. The inspector, Leonard Brooks, according to the embroidered name tape, puffed up like a bullfrog. Mandatory removal of hazardous overgrowth, creek buffer zone. We have authority under Emergency Environmental Order 23 to 417. Love to see the signed court order, I said, palm out, and the docket number so I can pull it from the clerk's website. He shuffled papers that weren't there. Victor stepped forward and shoved me hard in the chest with both palms. I staggered one step, coffee sloshing over my wrist. Ellen's voice rang clear across the yard. Assault on camera, timestamp 8:06 and 42 seconds a.m. Victor's bravado melted. Headlights swept the street, the same deputy, now wide awake and flanked by a second cruiser. Deputy Rollins took one look, radioed for a sergeant, and told Marlene the civil dispute had just gone criminal. They retreated with their tails and trimmer between their legs, leaving the cooler behind. I drank one of the waters. It was lukewarm and tasted like victory. We built a fortress of evidence that would have made the Army Corps proud. Ellen spent 3 nights in the county clerk's online portal and found the 2015 Grand Willow Creek Preservation Act, grandfathered properties exempt in Section 7B. I overlaid drone GPS on the county survey, printed poster size for the dining room wall, and framed it like a diploma. I marked real pins with UV paint only a black light could reveal, then filmed the process with a news ticker running at the bottom to prove timestamp. Then Ellen found the smoking gun. Victor's company, Green Horizon LLC, registered to Marlene's sister Lorraine Whitaker 6 months earlier at a residential address in the next county. Shell Company, HOA Funds, Family Payoff. The articles of incorporation listed Lorraine as sole member. Victor was only the public face. I cornered Walter Finch at his morning coffee spot downtown, a little indie roaster called Bean there that smelled of cardamom and desperation. He was halfway through a court-to-do when I slid into the opposite chair. Walter, have you signed checks to Green Horizon? He nearly dropped the tiny cup. I slid Lorraine's registration across the table, highlighted in neon yellow. That's fraud. You could be complicit. Prison orange isn't your color. He fled without his change. Next morning at 6:12 a.m., a plain thumb drive fell from my mailbox wrapped in a rubber band and a post-it that read for Harold, burn after reading. Inside, every invoice, every email, every scanned check. Marlene promising Victor the buffer zone contract for $42,000. Leonard Brooks agreeing to cite me for 10 grand post-project, paid by Green Horizon consulting fee. Walter had copied the entire scheme, complete with metadata showing the original files were created on Marlene's iMac. Our lawyer, Tom Riley, 62, ex-prosecutor, still wore suspenders like it was 1985, grinned like Christmas morning. Slam dunk, but let's bury them so deep they need a periscope. He had me call Brooks from the landline, recorded under state one-party consent. Brooks bragged about emergency authority that didn't exist, quoted statutes that applied only to commercial wetlands, and promised to handle the paperwork downtown. When Tom introduced himself, David T. Riley, counsel for the Grayson family, this call is being recorded, Brooks hung up mid-stutter. 30 seconds later Marlene's name lit my cell. I put her on speaker. What did you say to Leonard? She shrieked, voice cracking like a teenager's. This is harassment. I'll have you arrested. Ma'am, Tom said calmly. You just confirmed a criminal conspiracy on a recorded line. Have a nice day. We installed motion floods and cameras, 8 reel links with 180-degree lenses, cloud backup, and a siren that could wake the dead. I handed copies of everything to the Sheriff's Civil Division, stamped received, and kept the originals in a fire safe bolted to the foundation. Then we waited. Tuesday, May 23rd, 12:07 a.m., the flood snapped on like a prison break. A flatbed lowered a Caterpillar D8, bigger than the first, blade scarred from 100 jobs. 2 rent-a-cops in black windbreakers with private security stenciled in white blocked the gate, batons swinging. The dozer operator revved until blue smoke rolled. I yelled from the deck. Ellen was already on with 911, voice steady as a metronome. Sirens answered fast, 2 cruisers, a sergeant's Tahoe, lights painting the oaks red and blue. The rent-a-cops hit the pavement face first. The dozer operator raised his hand so fast he nearly clipped the roll cage. Marlene screeched up in a pearl-white Lexus, silk pajamas flapping, hair for once unfrozen. This is my project, she screamed. I hired them. Sergeant Alvarez held up Walter's thumb drive in a labeled evidence bag. Marlene Whitaker, you have the right to remain silent. She took the plea in July, felony fraud, conspiracy, restitution of $41,800 to the HOA, lifetime ban from any board in the state. Brooks lost his job, his inspector's license, and his pension. Victor got 2 years probation, 300 hours community service, and a dissolved LLC. The new HOA board, elected in a fury at a meeting where the lemonade ran out before the shouting, paid for native plant restoration along the creek, river birch, buttonbush, cardinal flower, all chosen by me from a nursery in Tennessee. They replaced our fence with pressure-treated cedar, posts set in concrete, dyed to match the soil. They even installed a tasteful bronze plaque, Grayson Wildlife Habitat, EST. 2023. These days the only rumble is the creek after rain. Ferdinand the frog sits under a new river birch, UV paint still glowing on the real survey pins, if anyone cares to check with a black light. Marlene's house sold in September to a lovely couple from Seattle who asked if the frog came with the property. The for sale sign on Victor's old office has been up longer than his marriage lasted. Lines matter. Draw them clean, document them thoroughly, and defend them calmly. Bullies eventually learn to color inside them, or they color in jumpsuits. What do you think? When does standing your ground cross into vigilante territory? Ever had a neighbor try to steal your yard, your peace, or your frog? Drop your story below. I read every comment, and I answer the good ones.